Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr,
business consultant.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr Business Consulting.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Viktor Frankl said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Well, on today's episode, we talk about change, ancient healing strategies that can help us increase energy, burn fat, get better sleep, improve cognition, and become the healthiest version of ourselves. Our guest is a certified functional health practitioner, the world's leading expert on the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting, a 4-time best-selling author, keynote speaker, and host of the award-winning Keto Kamp podcast. Please welcome the founder of Keto Kamp and the man who's on a mission to help 1 billion people live a healthier lifestyle, Ben Azadi. Ben, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jay, for that wonderful introduction and for having me on your show. I'm really excited about this.
As am I. I am so much looking forward to this. I know it's going to be a great one. So let's dive right in. I would love to find out from you what your favorite trait is about yourself.
What a great way to start the conversation. My favorite trait is about myself is seeing both sides of things, meaning when crap hits the fan, when life punches you in the face like it always does, I immediately pause and reflect, okay, what's the lesson to be learned here? What can I be grateful for about this situation? So seeing both sides, and I know that's the universal law. Nothing's good, nothing's bad, up, down, left, right. There's always a positive to a negative and vice versa. So for me, I believe one of my greatest traits is when there's a lot of negativity happening, a lot of what I perceive as challenges, I don't let it overcome me and change my attitude and mood. I immediately extract the goodness from it and bring things to homeostasis.
Ooh, what a fantastic response. Can you give our listeners maybe a recent example that we can all learn from where you've employed that trait? Yeah,
so perfect. I was in Park City, Utah 4 weeks ago for a mastermind with the group of doctors that I work with. And 2 days after I got back home here in Miami, got really sick with COVID, and it really knocked me on my butt. And that was a very important week for me. I had all these interviews scheduled. I had a studio booked out with a TikTok influencer to go there and record, and I had all these things lined up. And I wake up, fever of 104.5, feeling awful. So I cleared my entire schedule, and I'm like just laying there in bed, kind of frustrated. I had all these opportunities, and I'm like, okay, this is a chance for me to rest, recover, reset, work on my immune system, build things up. And I used that as a time to just rest and recover. And I actually needed, a little bit of a break because I was kind of nonstop traveling, lectures, podcast interviews. So it gave me a week off. I didn't have to worry about emails. I didn't have to check anything. So I saw the benefits of what I was perceiving as just nothing but negatives. And it was difficult, at first because I was feeling awful. But as soon as I start to go through those motions of and thoughts of like, why is this happening to me? I immediately write down what I'm grateful for, or just think what I'm grateful for and extract the good things that are a result of what I perceived as only negative things.
Wow, what an amazing way of looking at things. And it reminds me, I believe it was Tony Robbins that may have said, how can this situation be the best situation? And I'm butchering that, but it's something to that degree. And it also reminds me and I've talked about this before on this podcast, but there's a little piece of paper that was given to me years ago. It was around Valentine's Day. And on the piece of paper says, "Let me see this differently." And it's something that I keep with me at all times in my car. And it's just that constant reminder to take just that brief moment to step back from a situation and look at it differently. Take a deep breath. And what can I find in this situation that's a positive something that can help me reframe it and that actually empowers me versus going down a rabbit hole and turning this into a mountain when it really doesn't need to be.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I love that you have that note, and it's a great reminder. And it's really about awareness. When things happen, you pause for a second and just become aware of all of the gifts from the challenge. There's a gift in every challenge. And it reminds me of what Dr. Wayne Dyer said. He said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? It's our perception, it's our thoughts. And we have the ability to change that like in a second, which is a superpower, I believe, as a human being.
Could not agree with you more. So I want to talk a bit about some of the influences that you've had in your life. You mentioned Dr. Wayne Dyer, and in doing some research on you and learning a bit about your backstory, which we're going to talk about here in a few moments. Obviously, you've been through your own personal transformation. And in researching you, one of the things that I found was that you came upon some books and really started to do some deep work on yourself, some self-exploration. Talk about that period in your life, if you will, and maybe some of the books that you were reading and how that changed the way that you look at the world, how you look at yourself, and how you process information.
Absolutely. So for the first 24 years of my life, I was the victim, right? My problems are because of this person or this circumstance or whatever reason I was coming up with. And I was very unhealthy growing up. I was actually obese. I was one of those kids that low self-confidence, wearing t-shirts inside of swimming pools and in the ocean because I didn't want to show all the fat I had in my body, and had bad habits growing up, did drugs, sold drugs, video game addiction, sugar addiction, just a really bad lifestyle. And as an adult, all of that transferred. I didn't change my ways. And I found myself back in 2008, 24 years old, 250 pounds, physically obese, but also mentally obese, mentally bankrupt with toxic thoughts of depression and suicide. I was going through a really tough, challenging time in my life during 2008. Bad breakup. I was hurting every day, crying every day, blaming my ex-girlfriend, blaming my weight for my slow metabolism and enabling family members. I was just playing the victim card every single day. And I knew I had to make a change. And a beautiful thing about hitting rock bottom is as far down as you are in rock bottom, there's another direction. And it wasn't until I read books that books helped me understand that there's another direction I can go. That's actually the potential there is incredible. You could use that rock bottom as a platform to spring off of and head into the zip code of greatness. So, it started with my best friend giving me a book. I know you're going through a hard time. I think this book will help you. And the actual book they gave me, I remember it to this day, was The Slight Edge, which talks about, your decisions that you make every day compound over time to give you your results in life. And that one book was great. And it led to 5 books and 20 books and 30 books and all these incredible authors. And the main ones that really changed my life, Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I mentioned earlier, Bob Proctor, who's right behind me on the video here, Dr. John DeMartini, Tony Robbins, who you reference, Earl Nightingale, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar. I mean, all these incredible authors. And I started to fall in love with reading about these authors and their stories of hitting rock bottom and what they did to get out of that and achieve greatness. So it opened up a whole new world to me that was very, very exciting. But I believe the number one thing that the books did for me to this day, it helped me take ownership and responsibility for the first time ever. And that word responsibility is a very important word to me. And what it means to me is my ability to respond to life. And my ability to respond to life up until that point was very poor. Like I mentioned, I was blaming everybody else and I was the victim of my history. But once I took responsibility, I stopped being the victim of my history and I started becoming the victor of my destiny. And that's where everything changed for me. I lost 80 pounds in 9 months. I went from 34% body fat to 6% body fat. Finally achieved a physical six-pack. However, the most important thing that I achieved is what I call a mental six-pack. And I started to really understand how thoughts influence your health, your life, and your results. And that's where everything started for me. Everything changed for me. And that was about 14 years ago.
An incredible story of transformation. So let's talk then about about mindset, because you tap into that, and clearly through reading these books and looking at a different way or a different lens of looking through life, you were changing your mindset from that of victim to that of victor. So in that transformation where you took control of your life, you took control of your health, you lost a significant amount of weight, what do you think through that process, and thinking about mindset, what was the most important piece to that transformation? If you were to boil it down to one or two pieces of information, what would you say they are?
Mm. That we don't get what we want in life, we get what we are. And what we are the thoughts we have every single day. We literally become what we think about most of the time. So I discovered through some research from psychologists that the average human being has upwards of 60,000 thoughts every single day. And they estimate in those studies that 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts from yesterday, and 85% of them are negative thoughts, what Zig Ziglar calls stinking thinking, right? And I always say, if you're thinking is stinking, your dreams are shrinking. So the most important thing for me was, okay, I'm becoming aware now of my thoughts. And this is a stinking thinking thought. This is a negative thought, but I have the ability. Human beings are the only species on planet Earth that have the ability to change their thoughts. Animals can't do that. My dog, who's sleeping right here, cannot change his thoughts. He's just, he's present in all that, but he can't change his thoughts. We can. So I started to just let negative thoughts pass and choose a better thought, choose a positive thought, choose a thought that's going to serve my health, serve my future. But it was hard to do until I changed my environment, because your environment determines the thoughts that you think. And that goes with the people you hang out with, your friends, your family, your coworkers, what you consume. So I stopped watching the news. I started reading books. I cut people out of my life who were negative gossipers. And as I changed my environment, it was very easy to change my thoughts. And as I changed my thoughts, everything in my life changed, because I believe, Brett, that 95% of success in all areas of life, 95% of success is mindset, 5% strategy. And that has been true to this day for my life.
Yeah, it's so true. I follow a similar trajectory and a similar belief when it comes to mindset and changing our environment and being very self-aware of what I allow into my environment. And as you were talking through this, it brought to mind a book called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Have you read that one?
Yeah, that's an amazing book.
It truly is. And what one of the main points in that I think is very relevant here and going to be relevant to the rest of our conversation is that we have to change the way we see ourselves in order for true change to happen. So for those who may not have read Psycho-Cybernetics yet, Dr. Maltz was a plastic surgeon, and what he found was that oftentimes the plastic surgery that he did on patients didn't change the way the patients saw themselves. So after the surgery and the healing was complete, they'd look in a mirror and they didn't actually see the changes that were made because they hadn't changed the vision they had for themselves inside. So that piece I found very interesting. And as we talk about ketogenics and as we talk about transformation, is that part of your coaching and part of your programs, being able to change not only the mindset, but change the way we see ourselves?
Absolutely. It has to be. In order to make substantial change, it really has to be. It needs to be put in there. And you're right. I mean, that book is a great book. It talks, the self-image is what you're referring to, right? And it's our paradigm. It's the subconscious mind that really holds all of our history. And then we develop this self-image, and it's kind of like a thermostat. The book kind of explains that, where you start to achieve some success, but you haven't changed your paradigm, your self-image. So you self-sabotage yourself to bring you back. It's like the thermostat. So what we want to do is increase our thermostatic capacity, if that's a word, but we want to increase that thermostat and make sure we're changing our self-image. And there's two ways to do it. Only two ways that I know of to change your paradigm, your self-image. Number one, an emotional impact is a way to change your self-image. Now, 9 times out of 10, an emotional impact is negative. For example, 9/11 here in New York City was an emotional impact for a lot of people involved during that time. And it changed their self-image. It changed the way they started thinking. It changed their paradigm. Losing a loved one is another emotional impact that changes the way people think. So ideally, we don't want to go down the route of an emotional impact because it's usually something bad. The second way to change your self-image and paradigm, which is the way that I teach my students and I've done with myself, is constant spaced repetition and high-level coaching, right? It's kind of like what you do. It's repeating the thing over and over and over, changing your neural pathways and changing your paradigm. So for me, that means like I have something called a goal card right here on my desk. Every day, I have the number one goal I want to hit this year in my business, and I'm reading it every day. I'm changing my neural pathway. I'm living as if this goal is already accomplished. So that's how you increase that thermostat, and you're able to break through that self-image. And that's a big part of what I teach my students. Yes.
Terrific. So speaking of beliefs, what is something that you believed about yourself early on that you discovered later in life wasn't true?
There's a lot of things. It's a great question. That I'm not smart enough to be on stages lecturing about health and nutrition and cellular health and metabolism. That just not good enough, not smart enough. I had a lot of self-limiting beliefs, but that was the big one there. And that I always put myself down and put other people on pedestals, put them up there, and always thought I could never achieve what they're doing. I'm not as smart as them. I'm not good enough. So that's something that I worked on over the years, and I still work on it to this day. Sometimes I still get those thoughts, but that's been a big one for me. I'm just not smart enough to help the people I want to help.
Yeah, that's something I'm sure that many of us can relate to. And it's like once we begin to do the work and we have a process behind it, and we start to build confidence, and we're able to change and deconstruct and break through those limiting beliefs, our lives radically changed. And you've clearly shown yourself that those beliefs, what you thought at that time, certainly wasn't true. It was a story you were telling yourself.
Yeah.
And whether others were influencing that story or not, that's obviously something but we'll always try to find evidence to support that belief that we have. And that's one of the most interesting things about psychology and about the human experience. But again, once we start to do the work and we can push through that, real transformation happens and real change happens. But we have to do the work, right?
That is right. We have to do the work. Intentions are great, but intentions don't change things. It's action that changes things. And I've come to find that being more competent in studying and applying helps me be more confident. And the more frequent you do things, I believe Grant Cardone said this, frequency creates the genius. And I love that. The more you do it, the better you get, the more competent you get, and the more confident you become.
Absolutely. So share with us, if you will, what your morning routine looks like now.
It's pretty comprehensive. So I protect my morning time. And the reason I do that is because I know the subconscious mind is most impressionable first thing in the morning. So whatever I feed that subconscious mind will turn out to be what I get in life. And before, I was opening up my phone, looking at my text messages, my Instagram alerts, social media alerts, and that's like playing Russian roulette when you look at your phone or email first thing in the morning, because you can get something great, a beautiful comment, a great text message, or there's a fire you need to put out. Boom, your day is just you're scrambling and cortisol and stress response all day long. So I decided a few years ago to control my morning so I could win my day. So for me, I don't look at my phone at least for the first hour after I wake up. It's not even in my bedroom. It's on airplane mode in a different bedroom. I wake up and I have a journal right on my nightstand. And first of all, on that journal, there's also my Think and Grow Rich Burning Desire statement, where I write all my goals for this year and I read that out loud. And then I write down gratitude. I write down 10 to 15 things that I'm grateful for. I call it vitamin G, the strongest vitamin in the world, gratitude. So I get my dose of vitamin G. And then I write down all of my goals. And I write it down in present tense that I've already accomplished it. So I write down another page of goals I want to hit this year. And then once that's done, I take my dog for a walk outside in my neighborhood here. I'm not listening to music. All I'm doing when I'm walking my dog is getting sunshine, which is syncing my hormones with Mother Nature, which is very important for health. And I'm doing affirmations in my head. I'm healthy. I'm healing. I'm a genius, and I apply my wisdom. I just say dozens and dozens of affirmations. So it's kind of like a walking meditation, 20 minutes. Then I get into my apartment here and I start making coffee, and I listen to an audiobook as I make my coffee. Then I go into my balcony, and then I open up the phone and I start checking notifications and all that. And then I get into my office here. I have red light lamps that I turn on, and I turn on the red light lamps, which is called photobiomodulation. It helps with mitochondrial health. And I open up my laptop and open up the email inbox, and my day is getting started. So I usually start my day around 9 a.m., wake up around 6:45 a.m. And then I go, meetings and podcasts and all that up until like 5:30, and then I shut down and it's family time.
So you walk outside in the sunshine. Is that your exercise regimen?
No, midday is usually my exercise regimen. So earlier today, I went into the gym in my building, did a 45-minute workout, and then went to the rooftop of my building and did some stretching. So that's added in the day. For me, midday works good for a workout.
And when do you typically have your first meal?
I typically have my first meal around 1 or 2 p.m. So I fast, but I do have my coffee with a little bit of some fat in my coffee, like butter or MCT oil. So I have like a fatty coffee with some sea salt in my coffee, but not really a meal until 1 or 2. And my eating window is usually between 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. So I have like a 4-hour eating window.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Talk to us for a moment about the importance of routines. We just talked about your morning routine. I have a morning routine as well that's taken me years to refine and it continues to evolve as I learn more and as my body changes and as I age. But talk about the importance of routines and morning routines. How has that changed your life?
It's so important. I mean, a lot of people say that I hear this a lot. I don't have the discipline. I don't have any discipline. I believe discipline equals freedom. It really does. Who was it that said that? Do you remember?
Jocko Willink.
Jocko, there you go. Good old Jocko said that. And he's right. But everybody has discipline, actually, because they have discipline to eat the wrong foods every single morning. They have discipline to go to work. I mean, you have discipline. Just we need to transfer it to areas that are going to serve your health and your future. So it is huge for me because our habits determine our future, and what we do every single day compounds over time. That was the first book that I read, The Slight Edge, and Darren Hardy wrote another book, Compound Effect, all about that. Like your daily habits accumulate and compound and determine your results in life. So look at your daily habits, and if you're doing things that are not serving your health, serving your business, serving your family, make the switch. And it doesn't have to be a scenario where you change everything all at once. That doesn't work for a lot of people. Some people it will work, but small little tweaks lead to giant peaks. What's one thing you could change today in your morning routine that's going to be better for you? Master that for 7 or 14 days, and then add a second thing, and then a third thing. But it's very important. We're creatures of habits, and right now a lot of people just have bad habits. So transfer those bad habits to one good habit at a time.
Love it. So much goodness in those comments right there. So you've touched on very briefly, as you talked about your morning routine, a couple of things that we're going to delve a bit more deeply into during this conversation. And some of that is around some of the ancient healing techniques that you utilize today and that you have become an expert in. And as we go through some of these areas that we're going to talk about, which tie directly into your most recent book, Keto Flex, I would really appreciate it if you would share the catalyst for you writing this most recent book. You open the book with this story, but I would appreciate it if you would share some of that with our audience.
Yeah, I would love to. You've done your research, Jay. You're a great podcast host. I want to say that first and foremost. Great job.
Thank you.
So my dad is a big inspiration in my life. He had type 2 diabetes, which is very, very common, not just in the United States, but in the world. It's estimated that at least 60% of American adults are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And that's probably higher percentage. People are just not testing. They have no idea that they're diabetic, but 60% plus. And my dad was one of them. And he had it throughout my whole lifetime following a standard American diet. And we followed the conventional approach of I would take him to his doctor's appointments, and they would, give him his blood sugar reducing medications and his insulin. And I was checking on him every Tuesday to make sure that he was going through his meds and taking him grocery shopping and really following the path of conventional wisdom. And look, there's a time and place for conventional doctors and all that. I'm not against them, but a lot of the time they're not trying to look at cause and reverse things like diabetes. They're just looking to treat it. And that was the case with my dad. So he ended up getting very sick, and he had a really bad diabetic neuropathy. And for those who have diabetes or know somebody with diabetes, that's when the nerves of your extremities become damaged. There's not enough blood flow. The sugar has glycated and created this kind of barrier for blood flow to get blocked, and it creates a lot of pain in the fingers and the toes. For my dad, it was really severe one day where he couldn't even walk to the restroom. So he called me, said he couldn't even walk to the restroom. His pain was so bad in his feet, couldn't walk. So I took him, me and my mom picked him up, and we took him to the emergency room, Mount Sinai Medical Center here in Miami Beach. And they put him into a room, and he was very stressed out in that hospital bed that he ended up suffering a massive stroke, which left his entire right side of his body paralyzed, and he lost the ability to speak. And that was the beginning of the end for my dad. After that, they transferred him to hospice care, and I would visit him 9 months into this whole thing. I would visit him every week, and he would look worse. And I would just sit there with him and console him and speak to him and play music for him, but he couldn't say a word back to me. And I visited him one night, August 11th. Actually, the anniversary was very recent, August 11th, 2014. And he was in the worst shape I had ever seen him in that hospice room. I ended up walking up to him that night and letting him know how much I loved him, telling him how much he meant to me, and I'm always going to be his son. He's always going to be my dad. I kissed him on the forehead, and little did I know, I was giving him permission to pass on. He was holding on for so long, for whatever reason, but I didn't realize it. But I was giving him permission to pass on during that conversation. So the next, I went home that night and I prayed for God to let the suffering end, and I went to bed. And the next day, going about my day, I get a phone call from the hospice, and I see that it's the hospice, and I just knew something was wrong. My heart just sinks in my chest. I knew something was going on. So I pick up the phone, and it's the nurse letting me know that my dad, he passed away that morning. He stopped breathing, and he passed away. And it was a very emotional time for me. Part of me was relieved, no longer have to see my dad in pain. He's no longer in pain. But the other part of me was just so devastated that I lost my dad. And it raised a lot of questions for me. Why did my dad have to suffer so much? His friends and family suffered. Why are so many people suffering from unnecessary symptoms and diseases? And that's where I took my health teachings from a hobby to a purpose. And I started to look into the research, and I discovered that I have many, many of the answers and solutions to a lot of the problems people are facing, including what my dad went through. Like, I've worked with hundreds of diabetics, and they've reversed their diabetes. So I know that I would have saved his life with what I'm sharing to this day, but I also know that I was given that mountain so I could show the world that this mountain can be moved. Sometimes voids and pains reveal your purpose in life. And that was the case for me. I don't know if I would be doing what am doing today if I didn't go through those challenges. Maybe I would still be treating this like a hobby and not a business and a purpose. So that's the mission, to educate and to inspire 1 billion people and let them know your body is built to heal. Let's figure out ways to do that. Let's work together.
Well, what a powerful story. And as you state at the beginning of the book, I mean, this really is your pain to purpose message. And what an incredible way of looking at this, and the gift that you're able to give to others through the lessons that you learn there. And there's no doubt that no matter what your spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs are, that your father is certainly looking down and helping to guide you, and must be incredibly proud of what you've been able to accomplish up to this point in the way that you're serving and helping others.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So let's delve then into your most recent book. And what I'd like to focus on, because you've provided just a tremendous resource here and so much information that's well researched. And you also, in addition to providing background and information and scientific data, you provide us the tools that we can implement to be able to transform and change our lives and create the healthiest version of ourselves. So I really want to focus on those 4 key areas. So can you take us through the 4 pillars as you've identified them? And let's give some real world examples and possibly some tactics or some strategies that our listeners can begin to put into practice and maybe change the way that they're looking at their diet, the way that they're living their life. So let's start with pillar number 1, which is adapt.
Yes, pillar 1 is adapt. So what that means is becoming fat adapted. And I'll explain, real world scenario here. There was a study that came out in 2018 from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. It was a 10-year study. They looked at over 8,000 American adults, and they wanted to get an idea how healthy or how unhealthy are American adults. And they looked at things like glucose and blood pressure. Are they on meds, off meds? What's their BMI? What's their weight? Looked at different metrics. And they determined in that study that 88% of American adults are metabolically unhealthy. And Jay, that was before everything happened with COVID. I would estimate that that number got worse after COVID because people were staying home, eating unhealthy food. So for those 88% plus of American adults, they're what I call sugar burners. They are eating high carbohydrates, usually processed carbs, eating frequently, and they've taught their cells to burn sugar all day long. And there's nothing wrong with burning sugar unless you're burning sugar all day long. So when you do that, and you're not in ketosis, when you're a sugar burner, not a fat burner, it ages you faster. It creates metabolic damage. It creates insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes and cancer. Cancer loves sugar. It creates all these problems. So for those people, the majority of Americans, getting fat adapted and teaching their cells, all 70 trillion cells in their body, to burn fat instead of sugar is a game changer, because fat helps your body produce ketones. And that simply is a different fuel source that we're designed to use because all of our ancestors used it, meaning keto is not new. Keto is not a diet. It's a metabolic process. And we have a deficiency in keto with those 88% plus people. So we want to get them fat adapted. And an easy way to do that is to gradually decrease how many carbohydrates you're eating every single day. So we want to drop that eventually under 50 total grams, and then bump up dietary fat, dietary protein from healthy sources. And as a result, you're going to drop your glucose and insulin levels, which is what these people need to do, and allow your body to now tap into body fat. And that body fat is now being used for energy, sent to your liver burns that, and then your liver produces ketones. So that's what ketosis is. And that could be achieved in getting fat adapted in 7 to 14 days is what I teach in that first pillar.
So what are some of the healthy fats that we should start to consume, and maybe some of the other dietary changes that we should look at making too as we go through pillar number 1?
This is a perfect question, because not all fats are created equal. Not all keto approaches, keto diets are created equal. So there is a set. I'm going to start with the bad fats first, and I'll give a list of the healthy fats. There's a set of really unhealthy inflammatory fats that are all keto friendly. They're not health friendly. So if your audience wants to do keto or not, this is going to be super beneficial. And I interviewed 2 people on my Keto Kamp podcast over the last few years. One of them was Dr. Kate Shanahan, who is a medical doctor. She wrote a fantastic book called Deep Nutrition. She was also the nutritionist for the Los Angeles Lakers when Kobe Bryant used to play. She introduced Kobe Bryant to bone broth. She got Dwight Howard off of his sugar addiction. So she's like an incredible resource, and she's a friend of mine now. So I interviewed her, and I interviewed another gentleman named Brian Peskin, who's an MIT researcher. And I asked them both the same question. I asked them this question here. I said, what do you think is worse for the human body? What will create disease faster? Eating these bad fats or smoking 2 packs of cigarettes each day? And the first person to answer me was Brian Peskin. He said, well, according to his research, if somebody smoked 2 packs of cigarettes every day for 28 years, the chances of them developing lung cancer within those 28 years is about 16%, 1/6. But then he said, if somebody ate these bad fats every single day for 28 years, the chances of them developing cancer and or heart disease was around 86%. Okay. That's one man's research. So I asked Dr. Kate Shanahan if this man's research lines up with her research. And she said, actually, Ben, that 86% is closer to 100% disease.
Whoa.
So I'm going to give a list for your audience here, and maybe you could write them down. I'll see if I can go slow enough for you. They're called the Hateful Eight. That's what Dr. Kate Shanahan calls them. So it's 3 C's, 3 S's, and 2 others. So here's the list of the bad fats: canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil. Those are the 3 C's: canola, corn, cottonseed. The 3 S's are soybean oil, safflower oil, and sunflower oil. And the 2 others are grapeseed oil and rice bran oil. They're highly inflammatory. They cause more disease and more inflammation than sugar. I believe that. And these experts say probably even smoking. They're all keto friendly and they're not health friendly. So what are the good fats to eat? The good fats to eat are saturated fats and monounsaturated fats. So those include real butter, like grass-fed butter, real grass-fed ghee, which is clarified butter, duck fat, beef tallow, avocado oil, olive oil. These are all healthy, stable fats that actually reduce inflammation in your body. So that right there is a game changer. If you're going to make one change with your dietary approach, let it be that one, whether you're doing keto or not.
Excellent. And you mentioned, you use the words keto friendly, but not necessarily health friendly. So today, when most of us go to the grocery store, if that's where we purchase our food and produce, we see keto friendly or keto approved or whatever verbiage you want to use on so much of the packaging, right? There's so much marketing around keto. When we see that, we often, and I'm speaking for myself, and I try to educate myself by listening to you and listening to other experts, but when we see something like that, we make the assumption that, oh, okay, well, this must be good for me, right? Because we're associating the two between keto and health. I'm kind of putting those together, which I really shouldn't necessarily do. I'm just curious what your thoughts are when it comes to the marketing and what we see when we do go to the grocery store and why it's important to go deeper than just what's on the label.
The marketing is brilliant. They do a fantastic job faking people out. Just because it says gluten-free, organic, keto-friendly, or paleo-approved doesn't mean it's healthy for you. So what we want to do is turn that package around, turn whatever you're looking at around to the back and look at the ingredients list. I just gave your audience 8 fats to look out for. If it has any of those fats, and newsflash, a lot of those keto products do, you want to avoid them. Not only that, I mean, not to call out Whole Foods. Hopefully they don't sponsor your podcast, but the hot food bar at Whole Foods is loaded with those inflammatory fats. And people think, but Whole Foods is a healthy grocery store. They have some healthy stuff, but it doesn't mean everything is healthy. A lot of chips, a lot of packaged foods have these inflammatory fats. So look out for those. And then also look out for artificial sweeteners like sucralose and aspartame. We don't want those. So instead of those artificial sweeteners, better sources are going to be monk fruit, stevia, erythritol, and swerve. So to your point, Jay, please don't fall for the marketing, which is absolutely brilliant. Like, kudos to them. Look at the ingredients and make sure you're reading each thing. And if you can't even pronounce an ingredient, that's usually a red flag.
All right. So let's say we've been following the ADAPT pillar and we're now staying away from these 8 oils. We're changing our regimen. We're starting to incorporate good oils, good fats into our diet. Now let's look at the second pillar, which is fast.
Yes, the second pillar is called fast because now we introduce intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting, just like ketosis, is another ancient healing strategy that's been around for as long as humans have existed. There's nothing new about both of these. Might be new to you or nuanced, but they've been around forever. One of my colleagues, Dr. Don Klum, he did a patient population survey where he had several of his patients write down every time they ate something. And in our definition of eating something is anytime they raised glucose and insulin. So it could be a snack or a full meal, but anytime they raised glucose and insulin was considered eating. And the average American, according to his study, was eating 17 to 23 times per day, Jay. 17 to 23 times per day. And I'm here to say this as the entrepreneurs that are listening and watching who want to live a long life and be productive. The fastest way to age yourself is to eat every 2 to 3 hours. You will do that very fast. You'll wreck your digestive system, create insulin resistance, which leads to diabetes, and diabetes leads to all the other problems. So intermittent fasting is a solution. And intermittent fasting is not about cutting calories. It's not about that at all. We're not focusing on cutting calories. It's not about eating less necessarily. It's about eating less often. So you have an eating window and you have a fasting window. In Pillar 2, we talk all about different ways to practice that. But for your audience today, I'm going to give your audience a great schedule to follow, which is what's called an 18-6. And it's something you could do every single day, men and women. And how that works is out of a 24-hour period, 18 hours, you're in a fasted state, meaning you have your water, you have your coffee, which is perfect for your show. You have, your teas and all that, but you're not going to eat something. You're not eating a protein bar or almonds or a meal. 18 hours in a fasting window. And then you have a 6-hour, what I call feasting window, like eat healthy, eat until full. That could be on your schedule, 12 to 6 p.m. eating window outside of that fasting window. Now, if you're brand new to fasting, you don't just start with that. You kind of build your way up to that. And the book talks about that. But eventually, if you could get to an 18-6, that'll get you some great results.
Perfect. So share with us, what are the key benefits of fasting? This, as you said, this is not something that's new, but let's hone in on the benefits for our entrepreneurial and business community, those that are looking to increase performance, that are always looking for ways to just get better and feel better.
The greatest biohack any entrepreneur can do, I believe, is to implement intermittent fasting. Here's why. The human body, the number one priority for the human body is survival. So when you're in a fasted state, let's say you're doing a 16-hour fast tomorrow and you're 14 hours into that fast, your innate intelligence in your body starts to think this: oh, whoa, there's no food. We're going through a famine right now. We are genetically hardwired to go through this process. So the body thinks we're going through a famine. It doesn't know. The innate intelligence doesn't know about your refrigerator or Uber Eats or DoorDash. It automatically has this switch that goes into survival mode. So what does it do? It wants you to survive and stay alive. So the human body literally pumps itself full of energy. Why? To go out there and hunt and kill your next meal. It pumps you full of what's called counter-regulatory hormones. This is human growth hormone, cortisol, glucagon, epinephrine, and others. And it's the body's literal way of pumping the body full of energy and focus so you could go out there and hunt and kill. Thank God, if you live in America or in a country that has food readily available to you, you don't have to do that. So you could use all of that energy, all of the resources to crush a podcast, a sales call, speak on stage, whatever you're doing in your day-to-day business. I mean, that is a superpower. When I'm in a fasted state, it feels like an absolute superpower. The second benefit is when you eat food, it takes massive amounts of energy and resources and blood flow to digest a meal. Think about the last time you had a big meal, whether it was like Christmas or Thanksgiving. When you feast, your immediate thought is not, I'm ready to go get some work done, right? You feel like I'm going to go sit on the couch, become a couch potato, watch some sports, because it takes all this energy. But when you're fasting, you're using all that energy that would have been used for digestion. Now it's being used to just crush your day, the task at hand. So that is a very important biohack for any entrepreneur if you really want to be on top of your game. Not to mention one more thing, Jay, when you're in a fasted state, the brain produces something called BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotropic factor, but we're going to call it BDNF. That is like miracle growth for your brain. Studies show the more BDNF your brain produces, the more creative you are, the more resilient you are, the more energized you are. And you get that for free during an intermittent fast. And that right there is one of the reasons why you feel so amazing during a fast.
Well, I can definitely attest to that feeling. So I typically, first of all, I work out first thing in the morning. That's part of my daily or my morning routine. But I work out in a fasted state. I also find that in the morning, that's when I have the most energy up until, let's say, noon to 1 o'clock, because I break my fast around noon to 12:30. So those morning hours between my workout until I actually break my fast, highly, highly productive. That's where I really do a lot of my deep work, where I really have to think and work on processes, things along those lines. And it's been, since I started that many years ago now, it really became a game changer. And to your point, it really does feel like you're supercharged. It's a completely different feeling. And I'm not very good at articulating that feeling, not like you are, but it makes a world of difference. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
So
I love your routine, by the way. It's a great routine.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's talk about the next pillar, which would be the phasing pillar.
So the phase pillar is going to be a little controversial.
Okay.
What phase means is phasing out all anti-nutrients from your diet. So let me explain this in a really interesting way. We hear that, plants, vegetables are great for you. Like, eat your broccoli, eat your kale, eat your spinach. We've heard that for so many years. But here's the truth: for a lot of people, those plants, those vegetables actually could be inflammatory. Let me explain why. When you think about how humans have evolved over the hundreds of thousands of years, they had the ability, humans and animals actually have the ability to survive by running away or fighting or using their claws, using their feet, etc., to survive. Plants, they don't have feet, they don't have teeth, they don't have these mechanisms to defend themselves. So what did they do? What did plants do? All plants. They developed something called plant toxins. They're called anti-nutrients, and there's over 50 of them that I list in the book. So oxalates and phytates and lectins. These are plant toxins that plants have developed strategically, because when a predator eats the plant toxins are now eaten. The predator gets sick, and the predator doesn't eat that plant again. So it's a survival mechanism. So fast forward to today, we're eating these plants every single day, and a lot of people have leaky gut. That's when your intestinal barrier and what's called your tight junctions are now leaky. So they have these holes, and then food particles go undigested because your gut is leaky. So food particles go undigested. Those food particles enter the bloodstream, and then your immune system is activated to deal with that. And if this happens over and over and over, it leads to autoimmune disease. And a lot of people have autoimmune disease. There's over 100 autoimmune diseases that are out there. These plant toxins are a big culprit. And if you have leaky gut, and most people do, and you're eating all these plant toxins, it's going to poke even more holes in your intestinal lining, leading to a lot of problems. So phase is introducing the carnivore diet. I know it sounds extreme to a lot of people, but the carnivore diet, and it's just for 30 to 60 days as you work on your gut. But the meat does not have any anti-nutrients in them. Meat is highly bioavailable. I'm talking about all meats, including egg, including dairy. There's no anti-nutrients. So it's a great reset for your gut to phase out all anti-nutrients. And I've seen it really work well for a lot of autoimmune cases. A lot of people have gone through a weight loss plateau. I do it very often. I'll do 40 days of carnivore 2 to 3 times a year. Combine carnivore with intermittent fasting, I feel like a rock star. So that's what phase is. We phase out those anti-nutrients for only 30 to 60 days.
So in regards to meats, do we need to consume grass-fed, grass-finished beef?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned any meats. So should we be focused on specific, whether it's organic, specific products?
Absolutely. Grass-fed and grass-finished is important. So it should either say grass-fed and grass-finished, or it should say 100% grass-fed. If it just says grass-fed, but it doesn't have the finished part or the 100% grass-finished or grass fed, excuse me, it's probably finished with grains, and that's not going to be as healthy as a cow that was only fed grass. So yeah, we want grass fed and finished. We want wild caught fish, organic pastured poultry, organic eggs. So for sure, the quality matters. Absolutely, yes.
And 30 to 60 days, we are in the phasing pillar. For those that are watching or listening right now that may be experiencing leaky gut issues, and they go through and they're following this protocol, so you say 30 to 60 days, what are some of the things that they would begin to notice first in terms of just feeling better?
A lot of skin issues improve. So if it's acne, rosacea, skin tags, skin issues are highly improved with carnivore. So you should notice some improvement with your skin. And then also your mental clarity. Your mental clarity is going to get improved. If you have brain fog, that should be going away. Joint pain is a big one. If you have joint pain and post nasal drip, meaning after you eat a meal, your nose starts to get leaky and you start to drip, that goes away. That's a big result of leaky gut and plant toxins. So that's going to improve it. Seasonal allergies should go away, things like that. You should lose some weight, of course. That's just a byproduct of getting healthy. So you should notice a lot of different things shifting for you. And there's four different levels to practice carnivore. So there's level 1, which is very, very extreme. It's for those who are really severely, who have severe autoimmune. And that's just beef and salt, like red meat and salt. That's it. But it works really well, but it's just extreme. I didn't do that version of it. There's level 2 that incorporates all animal products. Level 3, all animal products plus eggs and dairy. And level 4, all animal products, eggs and dairy, plus some plant-based sauces like mushrooms and avocado. So there's different ways to do it. But the goal is to find whatever level works for you, or do one week a different level, the other week a different level. But you're going to notice significant changes probably in the first 3 days.
So let's move over then to the fourth pillar, which is flex.
Flex is keto flexing, and that's the name of the book. I love keto. I think it's incredible. Most people could really use this process called ketosis. However, I'm not dogmatic about keto. We shouldn't be dogmatic about anything, really. Keto is one tool in the shed, and there's many other tools out there. It's a very powerful tool. So I mentioned that our ancestors all did keto. That's a fact. They all were in ketosis, but they didn't stay in ketosis long term. There's not one diet that ancient culture ever did long term. They always varied their food. So they flexed in and out of ketosis. And that's the goal, metabolic flexibility. So keto flexing gives you different options. I call them rules, 7-day protocols to flex in and out of ketosis, meaning it makes it sustainable, not dogmatic. And it allows you to kind of go in and out of ketosis to burn sugar and fat. So by the time you get there, it should be about 4 months into it before you start flexing. And by that time, you've achieved this amazing metabolism. So you have the ability to flex back and forth and actually get more results as a result.
Wonderful. So if we are following the protocols that you outline in the book, we're following the 4 pillars. How does this help us improve our sleep?
Sleep is very important. It's fundamental, especially for entrepreneurs. As a fellow entrepreneur, I used to think, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I want more hours in the day to get things done. Can you relate to that, Jay?
Yes, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So I quickly found out that when I prioritize sleep, even though I have less hours in the day, much more productive, and I just feel better. So, doing keto, intermittent fasting, all these things, what do they have in common? They are all going to help your body reduce inflammation at the cellular level, which is going to help with pain. It's going to help with sleep overall. And sleep is so important that in the book, Keto Flex, I wrote an entire chapter about sleep, even though it's not a book about sleep. So it's very important to prioritize sleep, get that required amount that you need that's very unique to you. 7 to 9 hours is usually the range for most people. But when you get quality sleep, your brain detoxifies, you burn fat, you process short-term memory for long-term memory, so it helps with your memory. And doing all these other tools helps reduce inflammation, which can only help you get better sleep.
So true and so incredibly important. I'm going to tell a quick personal story when it comes to inflammation and how implementing the ketogenic diet and some of the other lifestyle changes I made a radical difference in the way that I feel. So I tore both my right and my left rotator cuffs at different times, but I didn't have surgery. I had a very, very difficult time healing, was in a tremendous amount of pain, couldn't sleep. And I started to implement some of these protocols, obviously reducing the amount of carbs, increasing the amount of healthy fats, time restricted feeding, things along those lines. And over a relatively short period of time, as I made these changes, that inflammation went down, and oh my gosh, it made all the difference in the world.
Wow.
I was able to move my arms. I was able to sleep. I could sleep in a position that I was used to without having pain. I could go in the gym and do the lifting and the other things that I wanted to do. It changed my life. It
Wow.
really is incredible. So that's my story. And obviously, as you've stated, this, what works for one person isn't necessarily what's going to work for someone else. So find something that works for you. But
Well said.
before we wrap up, because I've got a final question that I want to ask you, please share with our audience where we can connect with you. I'm going to provide links, obviously, where they can purchase a copy of the book, but where they can go to consume your amazing content. And you have so much educational information out there, including your podcast. Please share away.
Thank you, Jay. My podcast is called Keto Kamp Podcast. Camp is spelled with the K. We have listeners in 111 countries. It's 3 episodes a week. So we're super committed with that. So if you want to learn more about what we're teaching here, and the podcast does more than just talk about keto. We bring on, I brought on Dr. John DeMartini just yesterday to talk about the mindset part of it, right? So Keto Kamp Podcast, and then we're on all social media channels, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. My website will probably be the best place to find all of that. And you can find the book on there too. My website is benazadi.com.
Outstanding. Well, again, we will link to that. So here is my final question to you. What is the most difficult decision that you've had to make in the pursuit of who you've become?
I could think of several. I could think of a lot. Probably leaning into my mentors, meaning I have mentors in my life, which I believe is very important to have a mentor or more than one. And it's been difficult at times over the years seeing greatness in myself, but they have seen greatness in me. And sometimes I use their greatness to keep doing things that I want to do, even though I don't feel like I have that greatness in me. So one of the most difficult things for me would be to kind of let go of those limiting thoughts that I had over the years, that I can't do this, or I'm not as smart, or I'm not great. And having those mentors have been a game changer for me, because they saw greatness in me when I didn't see greatness in myself. So one of the biggest decisions I had to make was, okay, you got to let go. You got to either lean into these very successful people that are seeing greatness in you, or continue to live in that life, or that shell that I built from my learned behaviors. So letting go of all that has been a big decision for me and a big challenge for me. And leaning into the mentors have been huge for me. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that was the thing that came to mind for me.
That's perfect. It's so good. So good. Thank you. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. This has been an extraordinary conversation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your insights, articulating things in a way that is understandable, things that we can actually apply, the reason behind what you do, the work that you do, your purpose, and everything else that you shared. So thank you. I'm incredibly grateful to you.
Thank you, Jay. You're an amazing podcast host. I've been on a lot of podcasts. I'm a podcast host myself, so I could safely say you're an incredible podcast host, high production, high quality conversation. You've done your research, and it's been a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you very much. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. And please take just a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. And I tell you what, most importantly, beyond all of that, share with us one key takeaway from this particular episode. We would love to hear from you on that. And to enjoy more episodes, all you have to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com/podcast. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Pick up your copy of Keto Flex, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr.
Business Consultant. Jay Scherr Business Consulting.